Joined now by LAFC midfielder Benny Feilhaber. Benny, it's Dunny and Sully. How you doing, brother?
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, appreciate. Hey, by the way, thank you for changing up the script and doing the reveal backwards. Well done on that.
What's the reveal?
I figured something had to be a little bit different. I saw that Jordan Harvey, had just done one with his kid, and so I felt like I couldn't use my girls for that. So I don't know. I was out of ideas, and so I came up with that one.
Well, I liked it a lot. So, kind of first instinct. I mean, from the outside looking in, a bit of a shock. I understand the links with Bob and you going back home, being in LA. But I guess from the outside looking in, Benny Feilhaber, Sporting Kansas City, that seemed like a match made in heaven over these past couple of years. Kind of from your perspective, what this opportunity means and what Sporting Kansas City kind of meant to your career.
Well, first, Sporting Kansas City has been, the best 5 years of my footballing career, no doubt about it. And so it was a fantastic match, as you said. I was so happy to go there when I did go. And you're always disappointed when you leave, but I think that the 5 years were, a perfect 5 years. We won 3 championships, 1 MLS Cup and 2 Open Cups. And, like I said, I had some of the best years of my career there. And, it was awesome, both on the field and off the field, as my family grew there. I had my 2 daughters were born there, and I got married right before I moved to Kansas City. And so, that's our second home, and it's tough to leave, but it's not as tough when you're moving back to your first home. So, it couldn't have been a better place. And obviously the club that we're going to in LAFC is something that, and this is something that I've told everybody from the outside looking in before, I became a part of it. You could tell they were doing things the right way, and you got an ownership group that is really pushing the team to be successful right in its first year. And you could tell the fans are jumping on board and, are excited about the season. The stadium that's being built is going to be, a great place to play. And so there's just a lot of positives. And then you see, I know we don't have that many players yet, but you see the players that we do have, and there's a lot of quality already on our team. And so, it's great to come to a club with this kind of ambition, with lofty goals. And, I know I'm 32 and turning 33 in a couple of weeks, but I feel refreshed and renewed because of this change. And I really hope to do some special things for the club this year.
I think it's an amazing fit, Benny. Congrats. And at 32 years old, I got to say, first of all, thinking of a young version of you, I feel fortunate and privileged with Max Bretos when we called that 3-2 goal in the sold-out Chicago Soldier, the 3-2 when Max said Benny and his Jets, that 3-2, and Bob Bradley was the coach. And you were an up-and-coming, fantasista on his way, and you played it against Brazil there in Chicago as well. So hats off to you. When I was your age, I came back to San Jose to play a short time with, the Earthquakes, then the Clash. And I know how it feels to go back to the town where you're from and so forth. Has there been a vibe around the league, in the last year and a half as we see this building of LAFC with the ownership and putting the pieces together, where people in the locker rooms and so forth have talked about, how they're bringing it to a new level in the league?
Well, I think you kind of look at the 2 expansion teams that came in this year, and obviously Minnesota and Atlanta did it differently. But Atlanta, had a fantastic year. I think that, in my opinion, they were one of the top 3 teams in the league this year, and so maybe even top 2.
Yeah.
And so I think they got a little bit unlucky in the playoffs. They weren't as experienced as some other teams, and so there's just that kind of growing process within MLS, because I think it is a difficult league and you do need some experience. But you see the way they went about their business and got the players that they wanted to get, and had a true vision of what they wanted to do with some really young DPs and guys that made the style of play there exciting. And I think LAFC is doing it in their own way, or doing it in our own way, I should say. But
sure,
it's a similar process. We want to be competitive right away. We want to have our own style of play. We want to be pleasing to the eye. And so I think that's something special to be able to go out and grab young players. We have the 21-year-old Uruguayan that's a DP, and Carlos Vela is coming here, who's a Mexican superstar, and so we have players from different places that want to come here at still either their prime or even younger than their prime, and really establish themselves as top soccer players. So I think that's unique with MLS over the last maybe 1 or 2 seasons. Again,
speaking with Benny Feilhaber, LAFC midfielder. You can follow him on Twitter at @B_Feilhaber22. Benny, when target allocation money was introduced a couple of summers ago, everyone kind of thought that money was going to kind of be earmarked for foreign players, and specifically kind of foreign attacking players. And to an extent it is, but it's been used in kind of tangible ways, right? It's been a tradable asset. And in particular, starting with Dax last year, now seeing Darlington Nagbe, Sasha, and yourself. From a player's perspective, how have you kind of seen target allocation money kind of, I guess, readjusting the playing field with regards to Major League Soccer?
I mean, that's tough. It's tough for me just because I don't know how much everybody has, and it's tough to kind of get a real grasp of it when you're, not one of the actual GMs or coaches of the teams. But there's no doubt that it's opened up doors for players like myself, players like Sasha and Darlington, Lee Wynn, guys like that, American guys, to be able to get over that, maximum player charge threshold and so make a little bit more money and yet not hurt the team in being able to, acquire the players that are either DPs, the top players, or the other guys that fill out a roster that are equally as important. And so I think it's been good for the league. There's no doubt that once you put more money into the league, the quality of the game is going to elevate. And so I think that's one huge benefit. And then in terms of what you said, where it's a tradable asset, I think it just gives every team a little bit more leeway into which way they want to expand their club. So some teams will do it like Toronto, where they have 3 very, highly paid DPs, and then they work with the target allocation money in order to, get the other players to fit their needs. And then there's teams like Sporting Kansas City, which we had no DPs of that kind of level, but we kind of give everybody a little bit of the pie, and make the team a whole in that way. So I think it just gives teams different ways to make their roster complete, and I think every differently, but it's definitely an asset that's been, I think, hugely important for the development of the league as a whole.
I'm really glad that you brought up those names, Lee Wynn and Darlington Nagbe and Sasha Kleshton, and along with yourself, because what you guys have done is very important for American football, in this country. Absolutely. When you look at a time of all the greats that I've liked, like Diego Valeri, and along with yourself, right? So there's different ways that you can do it. And I think some coaches, I think back to when I played in Mexico one time, we had a guy, Porfirio Jimenez, who was a number 10 from Cruz Azul, and Hugo Aparecido and myself. They had 3 attacking midfielders in midfield, really. And I see you, when you talk about Carlito Vela, and other attacking players, that it doesn't always have to be just Benny as an attacking creative midfielder. I like when teams play with 2 or 3. And that's where I think you're going to thrive. I just want to ask you, from a physical standpoint, at your age, you've looked good since I've seen you. We look at guys like Tom Brady that's going into his 40s. What do you do in the offseason coming into this year in your mind? Is it just like what you've done every year with Kansas City, but because you're coming now and you're exploding onto the scene with this new franchise, that you'll do something a little differently?
Well, I'll be trying to do something similar to what I've done in the past, and the only thing that I actually did differently this year is actually I toned it down a little bit in the off season with what I've done in the last couple of years. So I think in general, and I think with maybe different players, it's a different situation. But 2 years ago was my last year of my contract, so then there's that added, you want to come out raring to go, and so I really got very fit during the off season as much as I could. And last year was the first time I got called into January camp in a long time, and I got, did a lot of fitness as well in the off season to get prepared for January camp. And in both instances, I had a bit of a setback in preseason with little muscle injuries and whatnot. So this year I kind of changed my tone and changed the pace a little bit, and kind of I'm doing some things, but not at a incredible rate. And I know that that's one of my biggest things that I need to work on, and that's the fitness. And I know that I'll get that with once I get in with the team in preseason. But I wanted to change that a little bit, and I want to make sure that I stay healthy in preseason so that I can get a full 6 weeks of preparation. And so that's been the only real difference. But for the most part, I know that that's one of the big things that I need to continue to work on, especially as I get up in age, so I can continue to be successful and influential in games.
I just keep thinking about the Bob Bradley warm-ups where he's setting the pace during the warm-ups and how miserable that is.
Yep. Bob's one of a kind. He's always one of the. He's going to be fitter than most of the guys on the team, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Again, we're speaking to Benny Feilhaber. You can follow him on Twitter at B_Feilhaber22. Benny, because you brought up January camp, I don't want to walk down the path of what happened, but from your perspective as a player and being involved, is it as broken as people want to make it out to be when you think about where the system is at, or just do we need better conversations, more ideas, more eyeballs, and more of a kind of a shareable conversation to make sure something like what happened this past summer doesn't happen again?
Well, in terms of purely what happened this summer doesn't happen again, I think that the latter would be more true. I think you got to have open conversations and, have the team be a unit and have a more fluidity. And I think that, that hurt a little bit with obviously the fact that, Jurgen was the coach for, 2.5 or 3 years or whatever. And then Bruce took over, and there was, I think it's always difficult when the new coach comes in and that kind of thing. But, and I don't think that's going to be an issue going forward. First off, there's going to be, I don't know, you told me, I think 48 countries that are going to play in the World Cup come 2 or 3 World Cups from now. So I feel like 6 countries from CONCACAF are going to make it. I can't imagine the U.S. ever not making it again. But in terms of actually improving the entire pool of players and really becoming a powerful country in soccer in the world, I think that there are a lot of changes that need to be made, and I don't really – there's some things that I don't know if we can change them because of our country's so big. We're a first world country. There's not tons of poor kids that play soccer all the time that know that their only way out from poverty is playing soccer, and I think that me growing up in Brazil, I saw a lot of that. I wasn't one of the extremely poor kids, but I saw how people are just playing all over the place, and that's the only way that they can get out of that kind of life. And so that doesn't really exist in the U.S. And if it does, then most kids are trying to go play football or basketball or baseball, maybe not as much, but I think those are the sports that people tend to focus on because that's where the really big money is in the U.S. And so I don't know if what plan we can make to really change that, but I definitely think that it has to be from an early age that kids have to want to really go full go to become a professional soccer player in order to really improve and get to that level of some of the other top countries in the world.
Hey, Benny, appreciate the time, man. Congrats on getting back home, and looking forward to seeing you out on the pitch, Benny, with LAFC, man.
All right, thanks, Sonny. Thanks, Sully.